Sean is waiting. So I'm going to admit you. And let's see. So I'm on my regular work computer. Yeah, let's stop that.
If you want to, feel free to interject, stop me if you've got a question. But unless I hear someone speak up, I'm going to move through the slides. We do have some 2020 cases and information that we're going to get to, but let's get rolling. All right, you're all aware that the Act has been around for a while, came into being in '92, and the bottom line, the purpose it was put into place was that as board members and elected officials, the expectation is that you will not do anything, say anything, or have any type of conduct that might give the public a reason to not trust what you're doing. The other piece, the other premise of the Act was it gave basic standards and guidelines that board members need to be aware of, and school officials in general need to be aware of and adhere to. That's important to understand. There are no what I call ethics police out there. These guidelines are things that you are required to be aware of and self-police yourselves. The one thing I do like to point out is that I get this question a lot. Are charter schools under the same rules as the regular public schools? And the answer is yes. Charter schools in New Jersey are public schools. The Act covers them as well. And so charter school trustees, and trustees is just a fancy word for board members. They are held to the same standards as you all are within the Act. One of the things too, I like to tell new board members, especially new board members who come on, and then it's usually a reminder to the veterans, is that if you have any doubt or concern about what your roles and your responsibilities are and what you should or should not be doing as board members, the School Ethics Act pretty much spells that out, as well as the 10 tenets of the Code of Ethics. So if you're aware of those and you follow and you allow your the way you conduct yourself to follow those principles, you'll never get yourself in trouble. As I mentioned, this is part of QSAC, and it's identified in the second sentence of the Governance Indicator 13. The District Board of Education annually discusses the School Ethics Act. I can tell you I had a board president call me, and because the BA was saying we need to do this and get this documented because we're going to be going through QSAC and we don't want to lose 8 points. And he called me to argue with me that, my BA is telling me that we read the 10 tenets at the reorg and we pass a resolution saying we're going to adhere to the 10 tenets. And my BA is telling me that's not enough, and I think they're wrong. And I said, well, I'm going to tell you your BA is 100% right. And I had to go through a whole explanation of the law, the QSAC, et cetera, before they realized they needed to get it scheduled. So the Act itself set up the School Ethics Commission. The 10 tenets that are a part of the Code of Ethics became a part of the law 9 years after the initial code came into being. The Act focuses on conflicts of interest. It also established our April 30th personal and relative and financial disclosure statements that we're required to do every year. And then it also established the mandatory training requirements. Mandatory training, you guys are veterans, you know that in your first 3 years, you got to do governance 1, new board member orientation, governance 2 and 3, the next 2 years of school finance and student achievement. One of the things that's required for new members is QSAC training, as well as superintendent evaluation training and HIB training. All of those are conducted in the new board member orientation. So anytime you get a new member, as long as they go through new board member orientation, you guys are would be in good shape as it relates to the statutory requirements that pop up in QSAC as it relates to those items, because the training is a part of the curriculum that new board member orientation covers. Re-elected members, every re-elected term, the first year you have to go through Governance 4, which is the legal update, which includes as part of the legal update a harassment, intimidation, and bullying update as well. So
Jesse, I'm sorry to
yes,
interrupt you.
nope, no problem.
Unfortunately, when we made you the host to this present, you also gained control of the waiting room. So I do apologize. Would you mind if you see anybody in the waiting room to admit them into the meeting?
Okay, I've got 5 people entered the waiting room, so I guess I hit view.
You should be able to hit admit.
And then admit all. Boom,
Yeah,
got it.
yeah.
Thank you very much, Jesse. I
Thank you,
apologize for that.
Jesse.
Thank you.
No problem. I will keep, I didn't even notice it popped up on the screen, but I will now pay attention to it.
Thank you very much.
No problem. All right. Let's get back to this. All right, now the SEC 9-member board commission appointed by the governor for each member is appointed for a 3-year term, maximum of no more than 5 from any one political party. And you can see the breakdown. One of the things I'll point out in one of the earlier this month sessions, one of the board members was interested in seeing who was on the commission, went to the website to look, and the website was basically out of date. There were just about everybody's term had expired. And so the person happened to reach out to the commission, and the administrative folks at the commission pointed out that, yes, the terms are expired, but it's in the statute that the folks continue to serve until replaced by the governor. So you may see a term that's expired. It may just be that those folks are continuing to serve while they wait to either be reappointed or the governor selects someone else. The SEC has a lot of power, but these are their 2 main responsibilities: advisory opinions and ethics complaints. As you're aware, advisory opinion is before a violation. If you think you're going to be doing something, you're not quite sure, you need to get an opinion. First individual you should reach out to is your board attorney. In accordance with your board bylaws and policies, reach out to your attorney. Attorney will tell you whether they believe that action may be a problem as it relates to the act, but you may not like the board attorney's opinion. So you may say, I don't like that opinion. I want a second opinion. This is where you can go to get a second opinion. Request an advisory opinion on the DOE website. Under the SEC section, it tells you how to do that. They review any advisory opinions that are submitted to them. They review on a monthly basis. They meet monthly, and then they will make a decision and will send you a response. And that is a confidential communication between you and the SEC. But as the little yellow box says, an advisory opinion can be made public if the SEC, if 6 members of the SEC vote to make it public. If they do make it a public advisory because they feel that every school official in the state should be aware of the decision they're making on that advisory opinion, they make it public, but it's sanitized. So when you read public advisory opinions, you can't tell what district it comes from. All you see are the facts and the SEC's judgment or opinion on that advisory. Ethics complaints, and that one other point on advisory opinions: only school officials can request an advisory opinion. School officials are board members, superintendents, business administrators, and other administrative personnel who have purchasing authority or have influence over selection of contractors, et cetera. So those, only school officials can actually request an advisory opinion. Ethics complaint is just that. Somebody in the state believes that a school official has violated the act. They can go on, follow the instructions on the SEC website and file an ethics complaint. If, hold on, I got some more folks entering. Let me hit admit all. There you go. All right. If an individual has a complaint filed against them, and if the complaint goes to the SEC and ultimately gets to a hearing, and after the hearing and deliberation, the SEC finds that the act was violated, they can recommend one of these 4 penalties to the commissioner. A reprimand, which I call that the slap on the wrist. Basically, you get an official letter from the commissioner saying, hey, you violated the act, don't do it again. The next penalty would be a censure. That's the reprimand on steroids. Basically, the commissioner issues you a censure. That means the State Board of Ed passes a formal resolution that has your name in it, stating that you violated the act, what you violated, and then you become a permanent fixture in the records of the state of New Jersey. In addition, in parallel, the board, that the member is a board member on, also is required to pass a resolution stating that their member has violated the act, and because they violated that act, that resolution gets voted and added to your minutes and is forever a part of the records in your local district. The next penalty is a suspension. The SEC can recommend to the commissioner any length of time that they feel is appropriate for the violation. And then ultimately the SEC can recommend to the commissioner removal. If you get to the point, once an ethics complaint is filed and it moves to the SEC doesn't dismiss it and actually starts it into the hearing process, you are now in a legal process, because once the commissioner has made an award, if the member chooses to appeal, you appeal to the appellate court division. So you are in an actual legal process at that point. Now let's talk about some things that happened in 2020 with the SEC. There were 21 advisory opinions submitted to the SEC in 2020. Of those 21 advisory opinions, only 1 was deemed necessary to make into a public advisory opinion. I'll touch on that here in the following slide. Let me admit these 2 folks. And there we go. As far as training violations, mandatory training violations, there were 22 cases last year submitted to the SEC. Let me give you a real quick synopsis of how mandatory training works. You all know you have mandatory training. Everybody has 365 days to complete their mandatory training. By December 31st each year, at New Jersey School Boards, which is the training organization by statute, the SEC has NJSBA we track everybody, and we start to run lists of all of the board members in the state who have not completed their mandatory training. That's board members, charter members, etc., who have not completed their mandatory training. Well, we usually start to send heads up emails to those folks in the November, December timeframe, reminding them, hey, get your training done. But as always, come December 31st, there's a bunch of folks who haven't completed. So we go out and start emailing those folks again, highly recommending, hey, you want to get this done. The SEC basically has asked our general counsel, when that initial list gets run, do whatever you can to get members to get the training done, because they don't want to have to deal with it, basically. So we'll spend most of this month shooting emails to BAs and to board members saying, hey, get it done. But at the end of January, we typically cry uncle and we finalize the list. So, and then we send it to the SEC. Last year, there were 22 cases, individuals who did not complete their training. 8 of those folks were removed from their boards by the commissioner. I haven't looked these folks up or their situations, but odds are very high that they probably were repeat offenders. I don't think the SEC takes the immediate action of removing you from the board. So it's odds, like I said, these are probably repeat offenders, and 8 of them were removed from their board. 4 were suspended for 30 days each, and then the remaining 10 received reprimands from the commissioner. So you can see the SEC, has been consistent over the last 5 years or so. We've seen the numbers go up, and they've basically been actually taking people off their boards. School ethics violations, 28 cases, ethics complaints were filed with the SEC. Of those 28, 24 were dismissed by the SEC, and then 4 cases actually went through the hearing process and ended up resulting in penalties, and I'll touch on those here in a few minutes. So the one advisory opinion that was issued last year in 2020 is an interesting one. Superintendent's sister-in-law, his brother's wife, was a lunch aide in the district and was hired before the superintendent actually became superintendent in the district. And the person was actually selected by the principals as the finalist for a secretarial position. Superintendent asked the SEC if it was fair to prohibit a qualified and vetted employee to move into another role only because her brother-in-law is the superintendent. Well, the SEC took a look at it, advised that if the superintendent recommended his sister-in-law for a promotion, remember, the finalists are recommending to the superintendent. Superintendent ultimately has to put that person on the agenda and make the recommendation to the board. If SEC said if the superintendent recommended his sister-in-law for a promotion, he would violate the act. And I cited a couple of tenets, and the public paragraphs, and the public would reasonably perceive this action was securing an unwarranted privilege advantage or employment for an other type relative, and would leave a justifiable impression that public trust was being violated. So SEC said based on the fact that a relative can't be hired into the district and the fact that the person is your relative, there could be an impression to the public that, well, you know why the principals recommended this person for that position? Because they were the sister-in-law to the superintendent. So that potentially could be perceived as an unwarranted privilege or favor. The SEC also pointed out that because of the sister-in-law being an employee in the district, the superintendent must recuse himself from any discussion on the sister-in-law's employment as a lunch aide. I said that this is a kind of an interesting one because my fellow FSRs and I have talked about this. One of the things that was pointed out when the past advisories and the nepotism law talked about the fact that a superintendent can't recommend his relatives or board member relatives to a position in the district. But it said that if they were already in the district, they could continue before a board member became a board member or a superintendent was hired. They could enjoy employment in the district like any other employee. That means they could apply for other positions within the district, et cetera. This advisory opinion kind of throws water on that, basically saying, yes, the person can stay employed in the district, but it kind of poo-poos the ability of that person to move into other positions or potentially, get a promotion or anything of that nature. So this is an interesting one from our perspective because we see potentially a companion advisory opinion request coming from a board member somewhere down the line. Because if you think about it, if let's say, for example, the board president his brother worked in the district, was working in the district before the board president became a board member and became board president, applies for they're a supervisor in the district and decides they're going to apply for an assistant principal position. And that person ends up being the person that the superintendent is going to recommend to the board. Is there not also the possibility that the public could perceive the only reason this person is being recommended for that assistant principal position is because he's the board president's brother? That same potential perception is out there. So we think that possibly somewhere down the line, there may be a companion to this coming from a board member, because you got the same kind of scenario, whether it's a superintendent or a board member, board member's relative. So just something to think about, but that's the only advisory opinion that was issued last year as a public advisory. The 10 tenets of the Code of Ethics, going to just flip through these. First tenet, as the elected officials, you got to obey the laws. You got to adhere to them, whether you like them or not. The second tenet basically gives you your marching orders. What you do should be focused on the children. Your decisions that you make should be based on the educational welfare of children. I tell boards all the time, it's not about adults, it's not about taxpayers, it's about the children. And the tenet B is the tenet that tells you that. Nowhere else in the Code of Ethics or the School Ethics Act does it say as board members you're responsible for answering to the taxpayers or the public in the decisions you make. Your responsibility is to do what's best for children. Tenet C talks about three of your roles your roles and functions as a board: policy making, planning, and oversight appraisal responsibilities. Tenet D, that you're going to carry out your responsibility not to administer the schools. You hire your superintendent to administer the schools, but as a board, you're responsible to work together to ensure that the district is being well run. Tenet E piggybacks on that and says authority rests with the Board of Education. As individual board members, you have no authority. Your authority comes from a legally advertised, legally opened meeting, such as the one that you're sitting in tonight. You have power and authority to make decisions. Once Megan adjourns the meeting, you become John Q. Public again, and your authority, you have no authority as individual board members. So it's important to remember not to make personal promises or take any private action individually that could potentially get you in trouble and compromise the board. Tenet F, you should not be surrendering your independent judgment to any special interests or partisan groups. And this talks about not doing anything and using your position in the schools to gain any personal gain for yourself or friends and family members. Tenet G addresses confidentiality. Obviously, whatever happens in the executive session, you guys have a lot of confidential information that you're privy to. It needs to stay confidential until such time that item becomes an action on the public agenda. And the second half of that is the two-way communication responsibility to ensure that your district is providing the appropriate information to those who need it, the stakeholders out there, as well as being board members and having the pulse of your community, understanding what the aspirations are of your community and bringing that back to your fellow board members and to your superintendent. Tenet H says that you're going to appoint the best qualified personnel available after the consideration of the recommendation of the chief administrative officer, your superintendent. So just the bottom line is you can't do anything in personnel without the recommendation of the superintendent. But I get questioned a lot. Well, don't we automatically have to say yes to personnel recommendations? The answer is no, you don't. You have to have the recommendation of the superintendent before you can consider it, but you must make an informed vote and vote based on you having done your homework and making the decision that you feel is appropriate at the time. But you can vote yes, and you're allowed to vote no if you feel that that's appropriate. But any time you're voting no against a superintendent's recommendation, we always warn board members, make sure you're not doing it in an arbitrary or a capricious way. You're doing so based on your homework and you're making an informed decision and vote. Tenet I, support and protect school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. I always remind board members should never be heard saying anything negative about staff, school district staff, in public or anywhere else. If you do have a concern, you should be their cheerleaders, basically promoting your staff. If you do have a concern about a staff member, then the appropriate vehicle is to use the chain of command. And the chain of command for the board is one-stop shop. You go to the superintendent, provide your concern, and then you've done your duty as a board member. Superintendent is your personnel manager in the district. He will handle any concerns you bring to them as he feels appropriate as the personnel manager. You should not expect the superintendent to double back and give you a report of what he did, if he invoked discipline, et cetera, that's out of your swim lane. So your responsibility is to bring the concern forward to the superintendent, and then it's up to the superintendent to deal with it in the manner that he feels is appropriate. And then Tenet J, refer all complaints to the superintendent, act on complaints at public meetings only after failure of an administrative solution. And I tell boards all the time that failure of an administrative solution, it kind of is misleading language. What it means is the chain of command has to have an opportunity to address stakeholder concerns. And then if it gets to the top of the chain of command, which is the superintendent, and the individual still not happy with the results, then they at that point can request a hearing before the board. And then at that point, you have an opportunity to hear the situation and then to deliberate and make a decision. But it's important to understand that you should not be trying to solve individual problems. You should be working to help them understand how to use the chain of command and what your policy says on as it relates to complaints and disputes. And every district has a policy. Board members should be very familiar with it so that you can help direct individuals who have a concern or an issue on the proper way to get their complaints handled. Instruct them how to use the chain of command. All right, let's talk about some of the SEC commissioner decisions. A board member employed as a teacher in another district failed to disclose income received as president of that district's education association. So you've got a board member who's a member who works in another district as a teacher, is also the association president in that district, and the district association pays a stipend to their board, to their association president. On the financial disclosure statement, the board member failed to disclose that as a source of income. Somebody filed an ethics complaint, and the SEC found that the member was in violation of the act as it related to the financial disclosure statement, and recommended to the commissioner, and the commissioner issued a censure to that board member. The second case, a teacher parent sent an email to the full board about the superintendent's handling of an incident. A board member intending to email the board used reply all. So the parent teacher also received the email that included detail of the board's executive session discussion of the incident. In this case, the SEC determined that there was a violation of confidentiality, but they also noted that there's a potential violation of the Open Public Meetings Act. Obviously, because by replying all, you are, and you've basically now have this board discussion taking place. You have a quorum, if assuming that the full board was on that, or at least a quorum. And so there's a potential that if someone wanted to file with the state an Open Public Meetings Act violation, that you may have additional issues that district would have to deal with, potentially resulting in fines that the district would be paying using taxpayer funds. SEC recommended a reprimand as of this publication. The commissioner's final decision hasn't yet been made available. All right, so the next one happens to be where there's actually, if you remember, I said there were 4 cases for 2020. There was also a late 2019 case that did not make our training last year that we decided to include this year to make sure you guys were aware of it. A board member, this is it, the 2019 SEC case. A board member posted content on a blog that contained deliberate, repeated, and unnecessary attacks of the qualifications, salary, and general employment of a tenured teacher in the district. So this is a social media issue. The SEC found a number of violations. You can see the tenets there. This one resulted in a 6-month suspension to the member. Basically, there were some gross misrepresentations that were meant to interfere with negotiations. The board member did a bunch of smearing of the staff member, which basically compromised the board from the perspective of its integrity. Remember, as a board member, what you say in social media does have an impact. People know, especially since they know you as a board member. It also harmed the staff members' ability to properly perform the staff members' duties. I mean, being attacked on social media by a board member really doesn't do a lot for your credibility with parents, etc. So the one thing on this case, the member, excuse me, during the hearing tried to argue that he had rights as a private citizen, right? And that he did put the required disclaimer. If you remember when we talked about social media, there's an advisory opinion, an old advisory opinion tied to letters of the editor and what you're allowed to do. That disclaimer is the disclaimer that he's talking about, where if you're going to say something such as writing a letter to the editor or posting something on a social media site, that you're required to identify yourself as a board member, cite that you are not speaking on behalf of the board, and that you're not authorized to speak on behalf of the board, and that what you're saying is your opinion as a private citizen. And then your SEC has said you're required to also then, anything you say must not breach confidentiality and must be the truth. That's the disclaimer. Well, this board member claimed that I did use that disclaimer and that I was exercising my rights as a private citizen, but and that he wasn't speaking on behalf of the board. But the SEC, in looking at all of the blogs and what was stated, noted that the board member routinely referenced that he was a board member throughout the blog. So it really wasn't convincing to the SEC that he wasn't speaking as a private, that he was speaking only as a private citizen. So here's a good example of social media getting somebody in trouble and the things that they said on their posts and getting themselves in trouble. So just this one happens to be a good one that folks need to pay attention to as a reference point when dealing with social media. And as I said, commissioner issued this person a 6-month suspension. They
Jesse,
yes.
I'm sorry, can you let people in?
Oh, I don't see anybody on my screen.
Okay,
Nobody popped up.
okay. I must have misunderstood. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been hitting them as they popped up. So let me do one quick thing. I'm going to minimize just to make sure there's nothing sitting here. Nope, I don't see anything saying admit anyone. So, all right. The next case, the commissioner revoked a district's send-receive relationship with an out-of-state district, identifying an in-state district to instead receive the district students. So this district had an arrangement with an out-of-state district for some of their students for whatever programs that the students needed with that district. The commissioner stepped in, said that, yeah, you need to do that in-state and identified a district that could take their students. This decision, the commissioner's decision, impacted the board president's child. So the president fully participated in actions that resulted in the passing of a board resolution to continue the relationship with the out-of-state district with tuition to be paid by the district, a blatant disregard for the commissioner's decision and a definite conflict of interest. In this case, the SEC found a violation, but they only recommended a censure. And the reason was because by the time this case was heard, the board member had resigned and had left the board and was no longer on the board. So because the person was no longer on the board, there couldn't have been a suspension or a removal. But so the highest recommendation that they could make to the commissioner to put it into the official records was a censure. But the SEC did make it clear that if the member had been still on the board, they would have been recommending removal to the commissioner. And the commissioner's final decision isn't yet available. So we're not sure where the commissioner's head is at on this one yet. And then the last case, a board member attended an all expenses paid conference offered by a potential vendor that the member introduced to the district based on a pre-existing relationship. SEC found a definite violation. Member took actions that were unrelated to his duties. There was no reason for a board member to take an all expenses paid trip to go and look at a product. The actions were potentially compromising to the board because, you may have made it tough for the board, to be able to actually contract with this vendor. And the board member used his position to gain a benefit for himself, right? A free out-of-state trip. The SEC recommended and the commissioner actually the SEC recommended removal, but the commissioner ended up providing a 6-month suspension. The SEC recommended removal because they wanted to send a message to deter other school officials from accepting any kind of gifts. Commissioner amended it to a 6-month suspension. The board member is appealing, but while he's appealing, he's serving his suspension. So here's an ethical question. There is a board resolution to approve the hiring of the architecture firm that you work for. Can you participate in the vote? Hopefully everybody's shaking their head no, because you're correct. You work for a firm And if that firm has submitted a proposal to be your architect of record, you definitely do not want to be involved in the discussion, the review of the proposals, or the vote. And then if they do hire them, you definitely will recuse yourself from any activities associated with the firm and the work that the firm's doing. It ties to conflicts of interest, which the Act primarily covers. These are those key areas that if anytime you look at an action or that you're going to vote on, if there's a potential that any of these may cause you a problem to you or immediate family members or relatives, you should recuse yourself, step away, or definitely get an opinion if you think you can vote. Verify that with your attorney. But like we always like to tell folks, when in doubt, step out, step away from that vote. Don't be involved. And it's better to not vote than to actually take a vote that's a violation, or take a vote that's perceived by the public that you have a conflict. All right. And the immediate family member definition by the SEC, by the School Ethics Act, is spouse or dependent child residing in the same household. But we also know that over the years, the SEC has, in their reviews of advisory opinions, have taken on and to expand the definition of relative, and they are using the nepotism law as the basis for what qualifies as a relative. And as you can see, quite a few more people are involved related to you that could cause you a conflict. And it's not just you and your relatives, but it's also your spouse or partners by blood, marriage, or adoption. So as you're aware, that aperture is pretty large and wide on the number of relatives, individuals that potentially who may be involved in education somewhere that could cause you a potential conflict, or relatives based on a conflict of interest situation could get you in trouble. All right, hold on, I got to admit. Yeah, all right. Okay. Another ethical question. The district has an opening for a guidance counselor. It would be a perfect job for your nephew who lives 2 towns away. Can the district hire your nephew? Hopefully folks are saying, I don't think so, because the answer is no. The board is meeting to discuss the superintendent's performance evaluation. Your spouse is an aide in the district. Can you participate in the discussion? The answer to that is no. You have a relative in the district. You are out of any personnel actions related to anyone in the chain of command of your relative. It goes back to the hiring of personnel. Superintendent may not hire a relative of a board member or of the superintendent. So that's the premise. If the relative already works in the district, then you've got other conditions that have to be met. An administrator can't have direct control or authority over a relative. Board member may not take part in the employment matters of the superintendent or any other supervisors in the chain of command of that relative. And then if there's a search for a superintendent involved and you have a relative in the district, you as a board member are totally out of a superintendent search, any aspect of it, including the actual vote to hire the new superintendent. So relatives potentially, especially those living in the district, can cause you a conflict. The board is voting to approve the memorandum of agreement with the local education association. You are a teacher in another district. Can you participate in the vote? I had a board member tell me that this is a trick question once they saw the answer. the answer is no. For the vote on the memorandum of agreement. And so if you remember, there's a advisory opinion A2417, which has a nice chart that talks about relatives as it relates to the collective bargaining process. So in this case, the board member, him or herself, works out of district. It's the second line in the chart, works out of district. The basic premise is can't participate in the negotiations. There's a no in that column. But the last column, vote to ratify the contract, has a yes. But the yes also has that below it, that double asterisk. You can see the double asterisk talks about after the memorandum of agreement, the salary guides and the total compensation package are attained. Those are three different pieces that go into the actual contract that ultimately gets ratified. So the memorandum of agreement normally establishes the percentages you agreed to, the language you agreed to, etc. And the board, the association votes on that, the board votes on that. Once the memorandum of agreement is agreed to, then based on the percentages, the salary guides get developed. Then once the salary guides are agreed to, any other compensation package items are finalized. And then that's the entire package, memorandum of agreement with language changes, etc., salary guides, all the compensation. That's what makes up the final contract that gets ratified. So as a board member who is a teacher in another district, you should not be voting on the memorandum of agreement, the salary guides that get presented, and any other compensation items that may be presented to the board that the board votes on. What you're allowed to vote on is the ratification of the final contract. So like I said, someone said, that's a trick question. I saw a memorandum of agreement. And I said, yeah, I can vote. No, the issue is you've got to have all those other pieces done before you can vote on the contract. Only thing I'll point out on this chart is that if you have a relative in education and they're in another district, the question that you need to answer is, what is their role in that association in that other district? If they are in some type of, quote, leadership position, heightened involvement position, such as president, vice president, grievance chair, building rep, those type of positions where they're more than just a regular ranking file member, then you need to discuss that with the attorney, because you may have a conflict as it relates to your collective bargaining process in your district. Doctrine of necessity. Bottom line here is that if you there are certain votes that require the full membership to vote, and a certain number of the full membership for that to be a legal vote. If you have too many conflicted members that you can't get to that type of a legal vote, then you have to invoke the doctrine of necessity, and your attorney has to pass a resolution, get it approved by the ECS, and then all of those conflicted members can now take that vote and only that vote. Volunteerism, as you all are aware, over the years, the advisory opinions have impacted the types of volunteer activities that you're allowed to participate in as a board member. The biggest thing is this next chart gives you hopefully the cheat sheet or checklist to help you in determining if any volunteer activity that you're doing in the district is appropriate for you as a board member. These 7 questions have 7 answers in green there. If you ask these 7 questions and you get the same answers, your volunteer activity is a safe one that you can do as a board member. If you get a different answer than the 7 answers listed here, then you need to have a conversation with your board attorney to determine, because what your situation is, because there's a high probability that that's a volunteer activity that you can't do as a board member. So use this as your guide, and it will help you determine which volunteer activities in your district you can and cannot do. Interviews, basically the SEC has frowns on any boards being involved in the interview process. There is one interview process that you own as a board, and that is the hiring of a superintendent. But they have made one advisory, they've issued one advisory that does make an exception. And it says that if you are, if the district is looking to hire executive type administrative positions, such as assistant superintendent, business administrator, even a principal, those are upper level leadership positions. If the superintendent desires to have board participation, then up to 2 board members may participate in that process. But the bottom line is it has to be, it's only at the invitation of the superintendent. The superintendent owns the hiring process. If the superintendent chooses not to have board participation in those types of position interviews, et cetera, then that's the superintendent's choice. You can't make the superintendent include you. But the other piece is if the superintendent does invite board members to participate, the board members must follow the processes that the superintendent has put in place for the hiring of that position. You can't go rogue and do your own thing. And then last thing on this chart, exit interviews. People leave the district. Typically, these principals and superintendents hold exit interviews. Bottom line is board members are never included or involved in any exit interviews. And then wrapping up, this time of the year is the time we tell boards, hey, you should take an inventory of your relatives who are in education or employed in the district. And then you should also take an inventory of your volunteer activities within the district and provide those lists to your board attorney and ask for an opinion. And the board attorney will let everyone know, where the landmines are so that you don't step on them. So we recommend that that's a good thing to do at reorg time. And that way, once you've got an official recommendation and opinion from your board attorney, the entire board knows where everyone stands, and you're able to help each other stay out of trouble. If you do have concerns or questions, ethical concerns and questions, the first person we recommend that you contact is your board attorney, following your board process for who can contact the attorney and how board members get permission to contact the attorney. And then if you're not happy, like I said, with the opinion you get from the board attorney, you can always reach out to the SEC and submit an advisory opinion request. And then the last thing I'll point out is if you guys get a ton of information from school boards, sometimes I get comments routinely that I can't read everything that comes from school boards. I end up dumping a lot of stuff. One thing we would recommend when you get your school board notes in your email, take a look at the table of contents to see if there's an advisory opinion update, because our attorneys attend every SEC meeting and to see what's going on, see what cases get addressed, as well as are there any public advisory opinions being issued. Anytime a public advisory opinion is issued, our attorneys immediately do an article for the next school board notes so that everybody, all the membership is informed. Hey, there's a new advisory opinion out there we all need to be aware of. Because remember, the minute the public advisory opinion hits the SEC website, all of us are accountable to it, whether we know it's there or not. So at least check the table of contents and look for an advisory opinion. If there's no advisory opinion update, I would still recommend reading the rest of the document, but don't dump it until you at least know there's no advisory opinion update. And with that, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. The last page here has links to the cases that I talked about and to the advisory opinion website. I will be sending PDF version of this to your BA for distribution to the board members. So you'll have all these links if you actually want to see the full cases that I discussed during this evening. And with that, I'm done. I will open it up for questions, any questions that you may have, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Anybody have any questions for Jesse? Okay.
All right. Well, I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, Jesse, before you hop off, could you just,
Sure.
if you could right click on my name, there's the 3 dots in my little box, and then
Yep.
can you pass host back to me?
Sure can.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jesse, very much.
Thank you, Jesse.
Make the host. Yes. All
Got
right.
it. Thank you.
All right. Hey, guys, thanks a lot. Have a good meeting, and hopefully your new board year is getting off to a good start.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you.
Take care, all. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
All right, that was fun. I saw in the email, there was this thing that we got to sign and send back to Patty, right?
Yes, yes. Mhm.
How do you want us to get it back to you, Patty? Do you want us to sign it and scan it?
Some
Send
board
it
members
to
are
email?
already
Is
just,
that okay?
yeah, I think if you want to electronically sign it and send it back, that's fine too. Whatever you guys want to do, I can run out to the sidewalk and meet you, whatever you want. You just let me know.
All right, well, I plan on scanning mine and sending mine back.
That's fine. That's absolutely fine.
All right, that was fun. Okay, next presentation. Everybody ready for round 2? We have a presentation on STOPit Solutions, the anti-bullying software, and our presenter will be Casey McKean.
Thank you, Ms. Chamberlain. Good evening, Board of Education. Good evening, Tabernacle community members, as well as educators who are here tonight. There's a lot of you here tonight. Good to see you. So I'm going to take a little bit of time, like Megan just mentioned. I'm going to review some of the features of the STOPit application, as well as potential benefits if we decide to adopt it as a district. Also, the second half of the presentation, you'll be able to see, I was able to reach out and highlight some feedback that I obtained from other school districts who have utilized STOPit for a period of 5 years or longer. So that'll be the second half of the presentation, and we'll get some of the feedback from those districts. So first, what is STOPit? Obviously, it's an online reporting tool. It's mobile app based. Our students will utilize this to report incidents to school contacts, and it's fully anonymous. So we know from previous Board of Ed meetings, and we know the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights, you have to have that mode of anonymous reporting within your school district, within the buildings, in order to be in compliance. So STOPit does satisfy that. Obviously, there's other ways to satisfy that. STOPit is kind of a technological way to satisfy that requirement. But perhaps, and this is my opinion, perhaps more importantly, if you do not have a mode of anonymous reporting that's effective, you may never know the issues that may be present or possibly even plaguing your school district. So it's a way to really be in tune. It's a way to kind of keep that pulse of your district and your building, so you're able to respond effectively to reports. Next, you'll see there's that messenger feature, so two-way. So what happens is administrators, school contacts will get that anonymous report from a student, but then we have the ability to reach out to that anonymous reporter in order to gather more information utilizing the two-way messaging feature. And again, this is a way, depending on whatever that report may be, we may want to utilize this to get more information, and this will drive the way that we respond to that report. So the goals of the STOPit application, obviously you want to deter and mitigate. If you institute the STOPit application, the thought process is, the entire district knows it's out there. Maybe we are going to be able to kind of deter and reduce potential negative student behavior. Also, we want to remove potential barriers that students may face for reporting. So we all know students, the student language is snitch. Students don't want to be snitches. They don't want to be that individual, that classmate that tells another classmate. So STOPit is kind of a seamless way to report and take away that aspect, that barrier. Another barrier, especially now with our hybrid learning style, students are alternating days in the buildings. They're here for a half school day. They're here, they're in, they're learning, and they're out. There may not be that avenue to report as there would in a traditional school year. So again, this is just another avenue to make reports if students feel necessary. Provide an avenue for students to reach out for help if necessary. So either for themselves or peers. They may want to report that for a peer who's in crisis or general assistance or maybe experiencing a personal struggle. The one that sticks out to me is that in crisis. We really want to be there for our kids now more than ever, given our current situation with the global pandemic. Also the goal, you want to continually enhance that school culture and climate. When I started in September, it was easy to see that there is a very positive school culture and climate here in Tabernacle. However, you can't rest on those laurels. You have to be aware that school climate and culture is continually changing. It's continually shifting. And again, the STOPit application is a potential avenue to keep that pulse of the district and provide interventions when necessary. Some other features of the application, we have that real-time reporting, and that allows us as school personnel to react in real time. Gives us that real-time awareness. Students have that ability to upload screenshots, videos, text messages. And again, this just aids in our ability to respond to incidents. Very seamlessly. Student privacy pledge. So STOPit is a member of this. So this is educational platforms and applications. They become members of this, and it's a pledge that there are strict standards regarding the use of student data. Can only be used for authorized educational purposes. So it's not like Facebook or some internet websites that are going to take that information, that data, and then share it with third parties. STOPit is an educational platform, part of the student privacy pledge that will not occur. Then you see we have the all day, all night, 24/7, 365 reporting hotline and incident management center. So this is managed by trained crisis agents through the STOPit application. They're available to review reported incidents, inform school contacts like Sean, Melissa, or myself, and escalate if necessary to law enforcement or a counseling service if that student may be in crisis. So when these incidents get escalated, school contacts were emailed, were texted, were called. They may send smoke signals if they have to, but they find every way possible to contact us and let us know. So we're always on call with STOPit. We're always there to react to student issues and then provide interventions. And if we're not there, then that incident management center is there that is managed by trained crisis agents. And lastly, you have that ability to deactivate account. So there may be a specific account that maybe you misused the application. Maybe there's a flurry of false reports from one specific account. We're able to two-way message that account, reinforce the appropriate use of the account. If it's still not used properly, we can deactivate it and then reactivate it anytime. This is the portion with feedback from other districts. So this is feedback from STOPit facilitators in order to get a deeper perspective into STOPit and its use in schools. And again, these are various districts I was able to get a hold of, and they've used the STOPit application for 5 years or more. It has been around that long. I was surprised. So negative experiences is one thing I asked. This district says there's initial false reports, but they were handled quickly. If we received multiple from a single source, they were shut out. So that highlights that deactivation feature. Second quote here, make sure administration is on board with responding to messages that come in at night and on weekends. Reports increase at the launch and then level off. So this is that, again, that 24/7, 365. We have to be there for our kids and respond when necessary, whether it's Saturday night, Sunday morning, whatever it may be. And lastly there, you see, knock on wood, we have not had any negative experiences. And if we do choose to adopt this, I would hope that that would be our feedback if ever asked. False reports. This is it's a worry of mine as an administrator. I'm sure Sean and Melissa as well. With this application, because there's not that face-to-face reporting, there's a worry, there's a fear of these false reports. So that's one thing I asked. So this district said there were very minimal false reports. We reinforced and emphasized appropriate use throughout the school year. We only had to deactivate one user in 6 years of using the application. So here, this district took it upon themselves to teach and then reinforce throughout the year the appropriate use of the application. And I foresee if we do adopt it, that's something that we would do. Next, after the initial launch, here we see the trend. There was a flurry of false reports, but it stopped quickly. So that, in my opinion, that may be the novelty aspect. When something new is instituted to students, they test the boundaries, they want to play with it a little bit, try it out. That could be one of the reasons for the false reports. And then that last quote here from this district. Initially, we had some false reports in the middle school, things like, Mr. L, does this really work? I utilized the messenger feature to remind students to use it for its intended purpose. So again, this is that teaching and learning. This individual, this school administrator utilized the messenger feature to teach students the appropriate use of the technology. Some benefits. So our first district here said, we were surprised at the number of reports relating to student well-being. So not only is this a tool for HIB, it's a tool for student well-being. It's a tool to report whatever it may be. It allows for the school to be proactive. Student surveys tell us how they feel safe by having another avenue to report issues or statements of harm. And you're going to see this word proactive. This is a trend here in these benefits. We've been able to prevent conflicts by responding quickly. It allows you to be proactive at a higher level. So again, you're responding to incidents before they get to that escalated level. That's the whole concept. Give us some information, let's run with that information, and then stop these potential incidents before they get escalated. Some more feedback on benefits. There's accountability when things occur. We were able to be aware that students are having issues, which allows us to be, again, proactive rather than reactive. And lastly here, STOPit has helped on a number of occasions. We were able to identify a student who was in a very bad time in their life. With the info, we were able to step in and assist. And I think now that more than ever, we really need to be highly in tune with our students' psychological and mental well-being. There is environmental trauma out there due to COVID, due to the pandemic, and STOPit could potentially provide another avenue for us to serve our students. And now I will open up to questions. I will do my best to respond effectively to your questions.
Mr. McKean, what size districts and what grades were they for the ones that you're comparing to here?
One district was a K-8. The other three, I had 4 districts who gave me responses, were K-12. Size fluctuated. Small like us, the K-8, and it went up to about 2,000 students max.
And then for the one that was the K-8, what kind of answers were you getting for them, since that's a better comparator for us?
I'd have to review
out of those answers you got.
They had all positive feedback. All of their answers were positive. In fact, they were one of the ones who mentioned administrators kind of have to be very ready on the weekends to get reports. That was one of their feedback pieces that they gave. But it was all effective feedback, positive feedback. They did mention the flurry of false reports as well. So we're realists. We expect that that's going to happen, but we're equipped to respond to it.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick, 2 quick questions. What grades are you looking to use this with?
Obviously, with our young, it would be district-wide implementation. And again, that would be Sean and administration's decision after sitting down and really talking through it. Right now, we're at the beginning stages, but obviously it's more effective with our older students.
Okay, and what involvement will the parents have in this? As far as giving permission or whatever?
Right. So STOPit provides a ton of parental resources. It provides kind of an unrolling plan for you to utilize as a district if you choose to. There's parental feedback nights, informational sessions for parents that would be held virtually, obviously, mailings that could go home, things posted on the website. So parents are fully aware of all the information and all of the features of STOPit prior to instituting it.
Thanks.
Casey, just real fast, I wanted to double check, or maybe Sean, I'm not sure which. This was brought to you from our JIF, so our joint insurance fund. And as a result, if we were to adopt it, there's no additional cost to the district and it's being recommended by the JIF. Am I remembering correctly?
That's correct. Yep. In fact, one of the questions, we had a liability question, right? We don't want to put ourselves in a position where we're exposed to any type of litigation. So obviously STOPit promotes it. They say it actually reduces your liability, but we didn't want to stop there because that's the company's opinion. So we reached out to the JIF. They basically said our insurance coverage is not restricted in any way from using STOPit. In fact, our reinsurer promotes it to all 45 of their school pools across the country as a highly effective risk management tool. So that's our local, that's our JIF. That's their statement. So it actually reduces our potential for litigation.
Casey, how many HIB incidents do we have on an average school year?
Tabernacle is amazing. Not many at all, Brian. That's a great question. I believe last year there was 2 total, both unconfirmed, Sean. I know I'm new to the district, but I believe that's my recollection.
We had 3 last year, I believe. But I think one of the things with a lot of districts have said is that sometimes it takes something like this to get people to be willing to come forward on issues. So those are the ones that have been brought up to administration, that have been brought to our attention. It doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't things that are going on that people haven't come forward with as well.
So what is our current process for anonymous SIB reports?
There really isn't a true anonymous HIB reporting system right now. That's one of the problems.
Does this app track IP addresses or where they came from, or?
It just goes kind of, as Casey talked about, it handles all their anonymous things on their end under their privacy pledge.
So you say privacy pledge, is that in compliance with federal and state privacy laws, or is it simply a pledge like, hey, we promise we'll do our best while we feel
It is
it?
in compliance.
Is it a pledge, or is it in compliance with the law? I mean, to say we have a privacy pledge implies to me that it's less than a legal standard. It's a marketing ploy. Yeah.
No, it's in compliance with the law. That's why it's recommended from the JIF and the other districts that use it as well.
So it doesn't track IP addresses. Nothing gets captured on where it comes from, or?
Now, a lot of these platforms, they use things. There's no resale. There's nothing like that. They keep it only. There's nothing like that in terms of tracking of who's going on or what's going on for that perspective.
So on the reviews on like common sense education, it says it's unclear whether the product displays personal information publicly, and it's unclear whether user created content is filtered for personal information before being made publicly visible. I don't have the comfort you guys have that this is truly private. I mean, you have the ability to deactivate somebody, so you must be able to identify a user somehow in order to be able to deactivate them. So you have a one-to-one relationship between the application's backend and the user interface to be able to deactivate that user. So there must be some identifying means of knowing who to deactivate. And what's to stop that person from simply reactivating that same account or reinstalling it? Without that sort of tracking mechanism, it defies logic to say you can deactivate somebody without knowing, by some serial number, some IP address, some MAC address, what's there. I mean, MAC addresses get passed across networks openly. I mean, I could open up my browser right now and tell you every single device in my network what its MAC address is. These are published, and a MAC address is unique. It's the kin of a DNA for an electronic device or a social security number. So the fact that it's purely anonymous, I find hard to believe in this day and age when nothing's really anonymous. It also defies logic that if it's truly anonymous, you wouldn't be able to block it out because you wouldn't know who you were blocking.
There is the ability within the system, even though there is the anonymous aspect you can use, you can create a user-defined field to allow someone to put their name in if they so choose. So I'm not sure if when they're talking about that aspect, if it's from the people that have identified themselves, or if it's the anonymous aspects. I'm not, Mr. McKeon, I talked to the other districts. I'm not sure if that was something they made clear to you.
Yeah, but I mean, just the overview tonight talked about, ability to deactivate an account. That means it has to be identifiable. What if something comes across here? Is the people who are running STOPit, are they mandatory reporters?
Yes.
So at what point do they have to vet something before they turn it over to the law authorities, legal authorities?
They actually have a system in place where they try to, as soon as they get something, it comes to us. If they can't get us at night, after they cannot respond to one of our phone calls, they see something, they have to then go to the police department with that. And they do have the state police linked into their account as well.
So if a report comes in that says, Mr. So-and-so touched me in an inappropriate manner, how is that vetted? I mean, so you have now a mandatory reporter, has to call the state police and say, we have a report here on Mr. So-and-so that, some inappropriate behavior happened. Who's the accuser? We don't know. What are the details? We don't know. I mean, what point do you have to turn that over? And we all know today, it's not about the end result. It's the accusation, especially if that gets into, the press, an accusation is made. It doesn't matter what happens on the back end. We're talking people's reputations, livelihoods, everything else on some completely anonymous app combined with a mandatory reporter status. Yeah. It's just that I don't believe is truly anonymous, because if it's truly anonymous, you wouldn't be able to deactivate it. And you wouldn't be able to track anything. But
to follow on to what Brian is asking about, Sean, last month, I think it was last month, it's all a little blurry. Last month, I think I had asked you if you could get an answer about the ability of the local police to unmask the anonymity if necessary. Did you get an update on that?
I did not. I'm sorry.
Because I think that will get at the crux of what is being asked here.
I mean, there's an additional
just
risk
to add on here, I think we're guessing a lot here, and I'm not saying that that's on us to know how this all works. And I don't really expect Casey or Sean, you to have a 100% on this yet, but maybe we should be bringing in someone from the company to speak to the operations committee or to speak to a smaller group so these questions can kind of get answered. Because I mean, I know you guys aren't tech experts. I don't expect you to be, but maybe that would be a better way to get at some of these answers as opposed to kind of wasting our time here.
I mean, the additional issue, I mean, you guys are mandatory reporters, so if somebody says something that turns out not to be true, we've now put ourselves in a position as a district of perhaps being the publisher of that information. And from a defamation point of view, are we now joined at the hip with the person who did it by
Brian,
publishing or
I'm just
republishing?
going to say, if they get an anonymous note in a Dropbox in the school making an allegation against a staff member, they are mandatory reporters. I think maybe to Kevin's point, maybe to bring them in to talk to Ed Tech or something like that might make sense. But once again, the district itself is a mandatory reporter. Any staff member is a mandatory reporter. If it hits an administrator's desk, as a board member, I expect them to take appropriate action to investigate and to protect our students. That is their legal obligation, period.
This application overall just seems to be a wonderful solution in search of a problem that we don't have. And it's rife with
we do have a
open
problem
issues and other
though, because we
questions.
don't have sufficient way for mandatory reporting or for anonymous reporting. So we do have a problem. So just keep
We
that
have
in
a problem
mind.
with that. And we also, this is one of the things, you're harping on one issue, but I want to make sure that we're being very clear. The other aspect that Casey was talking about, the other districts mentioned, that's a big part of this, is also providing an avenue, as we talked about last time, for students in crisis. There's 24/7, 365 support for students in crisis they do not currently have. We are right now dealing with a situation where all of our students' ACEs level, their trauma scores are growing based on the situation that we're experiencing with the pandemic. This provides them immediate access to someone who is a counselor, enables us to put additional resources on there, enables them to get them help if so needed. So I know we can focus on the what if negatives, but I think we also think about the what if positives, those students that are out there that could be needing something like this, a way to get help, that they can provide that for them at any point in time. So I understand your concerns in terms of the anonymity aspects, but we also have a requirement, going back to Megan's point, anything that's reported to us, the liability, the requirements for a school district and for anybody is to report. Ours is not to investigate, ours is to report. So if somebody has a claim or saying something to us about some sort of, and going back to the idea of an institutional abuse situation, it is our job to immediately report that. It is not our job to investigate that. And that's where.
So how do other districts handle this? We have a handful of districts with their comments. There's thousands of districts in the in the region. How does Chemung do it? Southampton? I mean, we keep talking about we have a problem with the ability to anonymously file these. I don't believe in my heart that this app is the best way to do that. What are the other towns around us doing it? What are the Lenape Southern districts doing? Does Lenape Regional use this kind of application?
And Brian, the follow on to that is, this is not going to solve our problem.
No,
this is going to
it's
solve
going to create more problems.
This is not going to meet the entire, all the students. This is, if we don't have a system in place that anybody can do it. We have kids that don't have smartphones until they hit 6th, 7th, 8th grade. So does that mean we're going to train them on how to do it on the Chromebooks that they have? Also, the younger kids that aren't as technologically savvy. I think I mean, taking out Brian's concerns, I think it's a great tool for helping our kids report, but it doesn't solve the underlying issue, which is we don't have a holistic, anonymous way for kids to, and that's where the counselors come into play, and that's where all that is. So I think we need to solve our first problem, and then we can also look at this to enhance a program that we currently, I guess, don't have.
But currently we have a website where anyone can go and file something, correct, Casey? Like, have you looked at that?
Yeah, I believe there's a PDF document, or I don't believe there is a PDF document on the internet. You can print that out from home, fill it out, and then submit it anonymously.
There used to be an electronic version
There's
where all you
a
did was fill in stuff on the
there's
website.
electronic version. You can go.
It doesn't work. I tried it.
Right.
It doesn't work.
That's what I'm getting at, because we've got it and it's not working.
So adding an app to it's not going to make the other one work any better or different.
Well, and I agree with
fix what we
Steve's
have.
point. A lot of our kids are not going to have any access unless they're using their Chromebook, or excuse me, their MacBook. in order to utilize any form of this website or app. They don't have it.
So, I mean, I hate to be on the other side here, but so we're saying we have a possibility of an app, a program that will provide our students, whether it's Saturday morning, over the break,
Somewhere.
when there's an emergency, what access to it, or at least some students. And instead of providing an opportunity for additional opportunity for a subset of our students at no cost to the district, at the suggestion of our insurance group, we're going to say no because our kindergartners and first graders may not have access to do this.
No,
That's not
Megan,
why
we're
I'm
not
saying
gonna say
no.
no.
Here's another
We're not gonna
tool.
say no. What we're gonna say is, let's get a program to fix our problem, and then let's use this to enhance. But don't come at us and say, this is gonna solve all our problems, when you haven't solved the core fundamental problem, of that we don't have anonymous reporting. I'm tired of, we're coming up with technological stuff for bad programs, bad processes, bad programs. Fix the program, fix the process, put something fundamental that takes care of all our students and not just some of them. And then give me a follow-on going, oh, by the way, I'm going to enhance this and make it better. At which point now we're reaching more people. But what we're going to do is get so focused on the app that we're going to forget about a whole section of kids. And we can't do that. And we're saying we'll get to that later. No, let's fix that first.
I would say even the younger kids, they have Chromebooks, they would have access. But more importantly to me, we're looking at cutting off our nose to spite our face. Like,
You're making a
here's
video
one
game
opportunity,
experience out of something
and
serious.
we're worrying about whether it's masked or not. That's what our insurance company is saying, is they find it to be protective of us.
Have we consulted the board's attorney about this? I know it's coming at the recommendation of the insurance company, but that's a different conversation. And I'm looking at this and I see a lot of liability. I see solving a problem for part of the student body, for part of the district, not touching another part where there's still a gap you still need to address. And in solving it for part of the group, I think you have exposure for other issues by bringing this in. For instance, 24/7 reporting and access to an admin who there's going to be time that is, for lack of a better word, burned in trying to reach someone perhaps on a weekend. And what is the cost of that time? It's going to be situation dependent and outcome dependent. And, we all want to be accessible. We all want to do the right thing. We all want to help. But I personally feel like there is risk to the administration and to the district by doing this. And I think you need to get an opinion from the attorney.
Also, we have to consider, even if we save one child, isn't it worth it?
I mean, you could use that scare factor to justify almost anything. I mean, let's be a little more thorough in the evaluation, but we're making a video game experience out of, making potentially very serious accusations against people in an anonymous fashion in an app that I don't think practically addresses 2/3 of our students anyway. And to say they have access on the Chromebooks, well, that gets rid of the anonymity because now you're using a district device to do something that can be, tracked. It's rife with
How
issues.
many of the young students have the availability to get on, if that form becomes electronic that you can fill out anonymously? How many of our young students have the ability to do that or even know that it's there?
Well, how many would be doing it on their own? I would think some of our students are going to be talking to mom and dad, right?
Right. But if it's a crisis situation where a child doesn't want to go to mom or dad, how are they going to do this? I don't think we're just talking about HIB incidences. I think we're talking about a lot of different incidences. I have a grandson right now who is suffering from depression, and this pandemic and virtual learning is not helping him. He may not go to his parents, but he might go to something like this and reach out for help. It's not always going to be the parents that are going to be doing the reporting.
If you'd like, we will reach out to STOPit to see if we can get a representative from the company to answer your questions in one of our committee meetings. As it seems like there's a lot more questions the board does have. obviously we're doing research to figure out something, and I do not think that the representation of this as a video game platform is fair at all too. Just because something is online doesn't mean it's a video game or making any sort of joking light of this. This is something that
I'm not making any joke in light of this whatsoever, Sean. I mean, I have serious concerns about this being used to conduct bullying and for nefarious purposes, and that's not being given proper accord. And there are methods available, and if we're looking for an app or a solution for a child in distress, that's very different than an app where we can report stuff anonymously.
That is
They're
one
two
of the-
different functions you're trying to marry together to sell it, and it's they're two different functions.
Sean, can you clarify? I think earlier, before a lot of the Q&A happened here, I think I heard you say that while it is an anonymous system, the student does have the opportunity to enter a name.
You are correct.
So
There are fields that the school district can create when you're putting in, such as your name. So you can enter it anonymously, but if you decided to put in that your name, you could do that.
Yeah, so I to me, that is just ripe for abuse.
Well, that is actually part of the HIB thing, because again, when you're doing a harassment, intimidation, bullying investigation, you want to find out and meet with individuals that are witnesses to said potential alleged situation. So having those names in there isn't necessarily isn't right for abuse as much as I look at it as that's a way to help you in that cause. But again, like I said, there are multiple fields that they talk to us about and the like.
Well, here's my scenario, Sean, is I submit an anonymous entry that says, Mr. Hensky was mean to me, or mean to another student. And
you sign it as,
but
and you sign it as Brian Lepsis.
Exactly. Right. You're opening the door for abuse and bullying by having that field in there, right? It's either anonymous or it's not. And I think you need to kind of come to grips with that part of it.
Okay.
And there is a history in this district of bullying under fake names and false names and doing it. And I mean, I have the glitter bomb still. So this is not lost on me. That you're making it easier.
I think the fact
And Brian, that was an adult. I think you're reading into this more than
the fact that some of the
It should
feedback
be.
received from the other districts indicates that they had a quote flurry of activity early, says that maybe the kids, maybe this is not the right system because they're going to want to abuse it. They're going to want to test it. And
Look, to Vicky's point, because I think we kind of glossed over a point, which is what are we holistically doing? This is a great tool. It could be a great tool. But what are we holistically doing as a district to help our kids get through the tough times that they are right now and to provide them as many opportunities to get help? Not just one, not just a nap, not just, I mean, anything possible. And that's really that's what I think we need to be focusing on. If we get to the point where we talk to STOPit and we're satisfied to a certain degree where we can move forward with this, fantastic. But, like I said, going back to Vicky's point, I think we need to just holistically be looking at how we're doing it. I know you guys started out the school year very much engaged with the children and talking about getting schooling in the pandemic. But as we're going longer and longer in this, and now us being out of school again, there's no end in sight. How are we going to continue? That's the kind of stuff that I think we need to be talking about. And Sean, I'm sure you and Casey and Melissa are dealing with that all the time. You have a plan. That's the kind of stuff that we need to keep reiterating to everybody is what we can do to help our kids through.
So in previous years, there was, I don't remember the exact term, but it was basically a peer mentoring program or like a buddy type program. Is that still active? And if it is, how's it being run under hybrid schedules?
That is something that has been one of the challenges this year, Dan, running a program the way that it would have been. So we've done some modifications and different things, and a lot of it has been the amazing job of our counseling team. That they really have taken a lot. I know even doing like we've done every week or most weeks at least as our families check-in. That's really helped us to also identify those families that need at times is therefore the parents who are identifying their children who need additional supports and therefore providing it that way too. And then therefore the counselors can link those students up if case by case basis, perhaps with another peer or things like that. So the support's not always coming just from the counselors as well. But
Sean, is there any time in the daily schedule? I know it's a half-day session, but is there any time in the daily schedule to do directed SEL activities? Or is it kind of built into the daily lessons, how the lessons, only because I had the opportunity. I had one of my grandsons with here and did his schooling from here. And they went to 9 to 2, so they have a lengthier day. But they started out with a homeroom where 20 minutes of that homeroom was SEL. And every day they had something they had to respond to. Like they had to take a picture of themselves and then list positive words to describe themselves. Another day they had to tell a place where they would go if they were upset or angry. Where would you go to, some of them went to their bedroom, one of them even said they crawled in the bottom of their closet with a book, things that kind of help them and then they discuss these things. They shared each of the things and they discussed them. Is there anything like that, where there is a particular maybe 15-minute time where it's just SEL?
yes, actually, we have our guidance counselors and CST team have done a lot of what they call like the Ignite Your Shine lessons. So they actually been pushing into individual classes throughout the year, giving small group lessons on different things like you're saying. We also invested in a phys ed mindfulness program that we're integrating. We're also going to start very shortly beginning a mindfulness Monday or meditation Monday, I believe is what to call. So embedding some things into our morning announcements that are going to carry out. So there's a lot of different activities we've done. Even though we have this short period of time we have within the day, Vicky, we've done a lot of very creative ways to make sure that we're hitting those things and not just starting off the year, as Stephen mentioned, with a lot of the SEL things, but making sure we're continuing that throughout the year and making sure we're enforcing that with our students. In addition to, we have our every day, we have a virtual session of our guidance counselors available that was usually done, obviously, when the students were home, the hybrid kids, remote kids could jump on. But our guidance counselors have done a lot of those sessions with our students as well.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. All right, so if you'd like, we will see if we can get a STOPit rep to at least answer some of your questions in the committee meeting, but I obviously we're not moving forward with anything at this moment in time. And thank you, Mr. McKean, for your presentation.
No, thank all of you. And that is a lot of constructive feedback. And I do have a contact at STOPit that I can reach out to Sean, and I'm sure he'll be willing to do a presentation.
Thank you.
All right. Boy, this has been a fun night. How about we go on to approval of the minutes? Regular meeting, December 21st. Can I get a motion?
So moved,
Kevin.
Vicky.
Vicky, Kevin, second. Any comments or questions? Patty?
Mrs. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Dilks?
Yes.
Colonel Hensky?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Lepsis?
Yes.
Dr. McCoy?
Yes.
Mrs. Shoemaker?
Yes.
Mrs. Saylor?
Yes.
Mrs. Chamberlain?
Yes. The reorganization meeting on January 4th. Can I get a motion?
So moved. Brian?
Second, Steve.
Steve, any comments or questions? Patty?
Mrs. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Dilks?
Yes.
Colonel Hensky?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Lepsis?
Yes.
Dr. McCoy?
Yes.
Mrs. Shoemaker?
Yes.
Mrs. Saylor?
Yes.
Mrs. Chamberlain?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent's report, Sean?
I'll try to keep it brief. I do, first of all, obviously want to thank everyone in the community. I know it's been a very tough week last week, and obviously this week continuing with our remote learning. Obviously, as we came back and we tried as hard as we could to get our students back for in-person learning throughout the month of January, as was our intention. Obviously, that we were unable to continue with that for a period of time. We are very hopeful that it is a very brief time, despite I know that we sent some of those COVID notifications the past couple of days. Obviously, although we are in a remote status, there could still be others that are coming up as positive members or positive cases, and we do want to have had connections with our building, and we do want to at least keep the community informed of that, obviously, as well. I know I've received some questions as to how is this possible based on your remote status, but we feel it's important to keep everyone informed, especially if someone has been in our building for any length of time that it is showing that status, and that's what we're intending to do with these notifications. But as I said, it is our intention right now, and we're hoping that nothing else comes into our way to having our students grace our buildings halls again next Monday. As I know, it's one of those things. It's you walk in the building during the school year without the students in it. It's clear that something is missing from our classrooms, and look forward to having those students join us back very shortly. Thank you.
Okay.
Before we leave the topic of superintendent reports, I just wanted to again thank Sean, Melissa, and Casey for their weekly and monthly reports and the detail you guys put into it. It's really a pleasure to get a peek at what you guys are doing each day. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay, liaison reports, New Jersey School Board, Mrs. Corey,
Nothing.
Burlington County School Board, Mrs. Shoemaker.
The next meeting is February 4th at 7 p.m. You can go to the website to register.
Okay, thank you. The H.S.A, there was a meeting on January 14th. The holiday shop feedback was okay. They made about $100. The clothing drive did very well, $436. There'll probably be another one in May. The Boone fundraiser, which replaced the Yankee Candle fundraiser, raised about $305. Box tops, $186. There was a couple of purchases. They purchased mugs for Christmas and pies and coffee for Thanksgiving, I believe, and that came out of the Teacher Appreciation Fund. And then all the students should have received socks. That came out of the Student Activity Fund. Their new business, the yearbook, they need help with the yearbook. So if there's any parents on here that are creative, they definitely need help with the layout. They need 3rd grade pictures, preschool pictures. I think they even said 5th grade pictures. If you have pictures, send them in, please, for the yearbook. This is only going to make the yearbook better if you send pictures in. The Education Foundation, the H.S.A received their $2,000 contribution, and these funds are available for special projects for the teachers. There was a discussion on the OMS playground about making a contribution to the playground. Further discussions with administration were going to happen last week for more details, and I believe there'll be a vote next month at the February meeting. The Panzerotti orders just closed. That was the last day, the 14th. They had about 130 bags. There is a book fair that will be happening. It's online only. It'll be February the 15th. I knew I had a date. Sorry, the 15th through the 22nd. It'll be online only. They're going to offer the kids, hopefully, free ice cream cones for every order. We're hoping that, what is it called out there? Yum Yums.
Leo's?
What is it?
Leo's?
Leo's, that's it. I couldn't think of it. Thank you, Brian. Leo's will be back open. We can get some kind of gift certificates for the kids to get ice cream cones. There's a pound cake fundraiser coming up. And then there was a huge discussion about the bingo.
Whoa. That's not just a pound cake fundraiser. That's stocks cake fundraiser.
Yeah, well, I don't know what that is.
Oh my gosh.
I'm
from
Well,
Philadelphia.
that's because she has ice cream at Yum Yums.
Yeah, that's right. I got Yum Yums. I don't need stocks.
whatever.
Anyhow, Stocks pound cake fundraiser going to be coming up. Sorry. Back to the bingo bag that we had to cancel. Stop laughing, Steve. I can see you. Turn your camera off. So that's being rescheduled. Thank you. That's being rescheduled for April 23rd with the rain date of April 30th. It'll be like a drive-through raffle. So there was a huge discussion about it, but that's the takeoff from it, was the dates. So mark your dates for the bingo raffle. There'll be information coming out. It's for the designer bags. It's for the door prizes, everything. So next meeting, Thursday, February 18th. Okay, Education Foundation, Colonel Hensky.
Yes, ma'am. So the foundation received another $5,000 donation from a private donor. They also received another $1,000 grant for social emotional learning PD from Investors Bank Foundation. They're going to be working with admin to start planning and fundraising for the playground at OMS. And they have no date on the next meeting, but they're going to get that scheduled soon. So pending any questions, that's all I have.
Thank you. CPAG, Mrs. Shoemaker? You're muted.
No meeting.
No meeting. Wellness.
No meeting.
Mr. Dilts. No
No
meeting.
meeting.
Man, you guys act like we're in a pandemic or something. Township Council?
I emailed Mr. Barton today and let him know once again that as soon as he's recovered, we're willing and able to meet. Sean was CC'd on that, so hopefully he will get back to us soon.
Gotcha. All right, thank you. Before I turn this over to public comments, we recently went back to individual meetings, committee meetings, instead of doing the committee of the whole. I don't have anything on my agenda for when we're supposed to report on meetings that we have. Where do we fill those in at now? Anybody? Patty,
I think
Sean?
they used to go under reports, didn't they?
Like what we just did under liaison report?
I think it happened
Yeah.
before we took action so that people knew what had been
Yeah.
discussed.
They should be at the beginning of the meeting, right after we approve the minutes. So probably right after the liaison reports or before, so that then anything that would be actionable later in the meeting, the public would have a chance to hear and then comment.
Okay,
And the board.
so would now be a good time to do reports?
Yes, let's do the reports now.
Okay, so I'm gonna fill this in. Committee reports will come after liaison reports. And since we just switched back to this, we've only had, well, I had two, but one was just 30 minutes, well, not 30 minutes ago, but, all right, Dr. Jones, just, if you could just report on the Ed Tech meeting you had.
Sure. So the Ed Tech committee met on January 12th with myself, Ms. Corey, Mr. Delks, Mr. Banning, and Ms. Gallagher. Three major topics. One is curriculum updates, which you will see part of on the agenda. So two main things have happened. The state has released, updated as of June 3rd, 2020, updated New Jersey student learning standards. And there was also a state statute that mandates the incorporation of contributions of people with disabilities and LGBTQ people into the New Jersey student learning standards into our middle school curriculum. So number one, some of these are for the 21-22 school year. Some of these changes are necessary for the 22-23 school year. The administrative team identified three funding sources. The first was the money originally budgeted for curriculum writing. Additional monies have been identified, which we did not use when moving classrooms from TES to OMS. And then additionally, because we have not had lunches in the building, we have not been paying the lunch duty stipends to date. So we have some funding there as well that they're looking to possibly move to bulk up the curriculum section. So the request for today has to do with the curriculums that will have to be approved for 21-22. So that includes science, that LGBTQ and disabilities incorporation, our visual and performing arts, world languages, and career readiness, life literacies, and key skills. More than likely in February, the administrative team will be taking a look at the kind of the big picture and then looking to see about possibly starting writing on those ones for 22-23 to take advantage of funding, as well as a little bit of an advantage of planning ahead. Those subjects would include social studies, health and PE, and computer science and design thinking. So you will not see the 22-23 ones on today's agenda. We also talked about winter map testing. So for those of you guys who've been around long enough, we used to do map testing 3 times a year, fall, winter, spring. We stopped doing the winter one for most students because of losing class time in a normal year to testing, let alone in a pandemic. However, there's 4 groups that the administration has identified that they are planning on doing winter testing. The first one is the Algebra 1 and Geometry students for mathematics, because that is a key indicator for high school to make sure that they are on track. The second is special education students. This information is helpful when creating IEPs in the spring. The third is having the specialists identify students in our basic skills interventions who may benefit from having that additional data point. And then last but not least are our kindergartners. So that's going to be, I think that we're talking February, but that would not be every student. It would be a subset of our population. And then finally, we talked about counseling. And I know, Steve, you kind of brought up about the counseling end of it and the SEL from Vicki. First of all, the district has started having home visits done by some of our counselors to work with families to identify what really is their need. Where are they struggling? And in some cases, it might just be technological support of how to deal with the online learning, but really to kind of talk to families about what they need. There's been some additional resources that have been shared to staff about how to help students through trauma. And then last but not least, one of the things that staff identified is for our youngest students who are fully virtual is the need for social interaction with their peers, nothing academic, purely social. And they have created specific opportunities for those students in the K-5 grouping to get together as an optional meet for the purpose of providing that to support our students' social and emotional growth. And that's the highlights. If anyone has any questions, please let me know.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Dr. Jones? All right. We're going to move on to public comment on agenda items. There's a lot of people here, so I have a feeling a lot of people have stuff to say. Please state your name and address. Each speaker will be allotted a maximum of 3 minutes. No one may speak more than once on the same topic. Please keep your comments respectful and non-defamatory. Keep in mind that it may not always be possible or appropriate for the board to directly answer questions during public comment periods. And at this time, you may only speak on agenda items. Do we have any hands?
Mrs. Egan's got her hand up.
Mrs. Egan.
Hey guys, Lisa Egan.
Hey.
I just had a couple things. I just wanted to comment on Casey's presentation. It's such a, it's such a hard thing to really understand. And I volunteered for the HIB committee since the very beginning because I felt it was really important. And I listened to what the board members have to say. And I agree with all of you because you're the parents that would go online and fill out the reports and do everything that you needed to do. And you're the parents that would see, oh, so-and-so's making it up and whatever it may be. But we have a lot of students who don't have that kind of support. And although I don't think Casey's thing is the do-all, end-all, be-all, I think why not have another avenue for kids to report these things? It doesn't have to take away from what we're already doing or the options that parents already have. But what Vicky said, and thank you, Vicky, for sharing that, is more common than people think. There are so many kids that are really depressed and that don't have the support at home to voice it, and that maybe are afraid because of repercussion from peers or that people may know. So I'm thinking maybe we could view this as just another avenue, not to replace everything else. Just a thought. And again, I've been on this HIB committee from the very beginning. It's a volunteer committee and it is really important, but I think we have to try to reach as many students as possible. And yeah, so I guess that's all. There was one other thing. What was the last thing? What was the last thing you were talking about, Meg? Refresh my memory. This is
Counseling.
all reading.
We went through the ed tech, all the liaison reports.
All right, I guess that's all for now. If it comes back to me, I'll step up again.
Do you have a
Thank you,
question
guys.
about pound cake?
Was it
Oh,
about
that was it. That was it. Thank you so much. Oh my God, Scott, that is the best. And you're right.
Okay,
That's not
see?
just the pound cake. That is like the do all end all be all of pound
It
cake.
is.
So you can't just say like, oh yeah, we're going to sell pound cakes. You have to say
you,
the
Lisa.
name. You have to say the
Where'd you
name.
go to Yum Yums?
I'm going to Yum Yums. Sorry, guys.
And I will be buying the pound cake. So have a good night.
I will definitely have to buy one of these pound cakes
You
now.
have to buy one and you're going to enjoy it. And you have to say the name. You can't just say pound cake.
What is the name? What was the name?
Your memory's worse than mine. We're getting old, Meg. We're getting old.
I know. Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Any other comments?
I see 3 hands raised on the app, the Carbones,
Yeah.
Tylers, and Lampkins.
All right, Carbones, go ahead.
Good afternoon, good evening. Forgive me for not turning on my camera. So Krista Carbone, 113 Flyett Road.
How are you?
Good, how's everybody? So I just, I'm speaking about the app, but I'm not really referring to the app because I basically don't have too much of an opinion about for the app or without the app. One thing that I just don't want to lose sight of in just my experiences, our family's experiences with the peer mentoring group, peer-to-peer, that was available at Olson, obviously pre-pandemic. So many programs that were available at Olson that I'm sure will still continue. I just don't want to lose sight of the hands-on life skills for the mentor, the mentees, all of the work that went into those programs, teaching our kids leadership, communication, working with adults, being able to talk out problems. And I know that all kids are all definitely different and they come from all different backgrounds. Some are used to speaking up, some are not. I believe that those skills not only become apparent in middle school, but also you gather them and take them to high school grades. And then maybe you learn more things to try to be outspoken. And I just, I feel like I'm getting old when I constantly say, I don't want people to be hiding behind a computer and apps. And it's so easy to just hit a button rather than knock on somebody's door and try to have a conversation. And I know that that is obviously not for everybody, but I just believe that the school tries so hard to keep communications going. And I don't want us to, go into this app world and forget that we have a human side to us that we need to build in our kids and continue to teach these life skills that are definitely lacking and getting further and further away from all of us. So that's just it. I know that some people might not even know about the peer-to-peer. Our administration is very new. They may have heard of it or, heard about it down the line, but I'm talking from, experience and how peer-to-peer held on to student council and just all of those programs that I don't really want to see lost. I want them to just continue to grow and not hide behind computers and apps, and the expertise that our school has. And, Miss Bauer put a lot of time into that program and teaching some kids who those kids weren't the ones that were always gonna come up and have ideas. Like, I think she gravitated to the kids that weren't the talkers, and just built a lot of life learning skills. So I just had to say that positive comment, and I'm not against the app or for it, or I don't really have an opinion at this time. I just don't want to lose sight about our great programs at Tabernacle and our teachers and administration who's, you know, always been there for that growing of those kinds of kids. So thanks for just letting me, you know, talk about that. And, you know, I appreciate it. I didn't even expect to speak tonight. So I thank you. And I know it's been a long meeting. So
Thanks, Krista. About Jennifer Tyler. Jennifer, you there? Your hand's up.
Oh, are you able to hear me?
Can hear you. Yep.
Okay. I have two things. The first one is about the app. I just think whether it is thought it to be valid, anything that comes through it, or whether it's, you know, nefarious, I think was a word was called. It's going to go through the proper channels to be vetted to see where it ends up before. It's not like it's going to be automatically on the local news for everybody to see. And I think if this is even the smallest way to help the kids, I think it needs to be done, especially right now. I think it's so important. And if there's a tool like this that can be utilized to help the kids and they can do it without, you know, because God forbid if it was something at home, it gives them a way to do it and feel safe. So I just think, you know, it will do way more good than it would possibly do harm, because either way, when it comes through, it will be vetted. And then the second thing I wanted to ask is more of a comment. The email, when we get the phone calls come through, please check your email for a notification from, you know, Olson School Systems. I never get the email, and then I go on the app and it's never on the app yet. And it's very frustrating because it feels like with everything going on, it's just another shoe you're waiting to drop. And then you have to wait and wait and wait for it to actually, the email to come through to find out what now. Is there any way, and this is just a question, that maybe it could be so that the emails are completely out and then the phone call goes out to, hey, check your email?
Are you eventually getting the emails though, Ms. Tyler?
I am eventually getting the emails. My husband usually gets the calls about 15 minutes before I do, 10 to 15 minutes. And the email usually comes about 10 to 15 minutes is the soonest it usually comes through after I receive the call, which is second.
Okay.
So it's just kind of, you know, and it always comes in the middle of dinner. So I just would be, you know, instead of having it come through and then you're waiting, and, you know, the whole time of what now? And there's less than a week away before the kids are supposed to go back to school. So it's kind of like, oh, great. You know, is this another extension? You know, it would just be nice if everything came together nicely for just one time in life.
Yeah, I know that some for whatever reason, it seems like the messaging service is not always sending out the email and the phone call at the exact same time. I know that has definitely been something you bring up that I've had happen to myself as well. So it's something we'll look more into for you, Ms. Tyler. Thank you for bringing it to our attention from your perspective.
Well, it was just a thought. I mean, I don't know if it's, you know, I get everybody, you know, it's generated, but if there was an option to choose for the calls to not go out until after the emails went, it would make it a little easier, because it's just very nerve-wracking wondering what now when it comes through.
Understandable.
Miss Tyler, can
thank
I
you.
have your address, please? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. 3 Elmwood Drive.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Lori Lampkin. Lori Lampkin?
It's Jim Lampkin. So,
Jim? Sorry about that.
well, Lori's here as well. I had a question regarding the STOPit representative. Wanted to know if that representative would be taking questions from the public. I do have a number of concerns with the app. In particular, I think if I heard the presentation correctly, videos and pictures are able to be uploaded. And you know, no one has really talked about where that data goes, how long that data is stored for. We're talking about pictures and videos of minors. Pictures could be taken in, you know, things that shouldn't be taken, and all of a sudden they're up on the World Wide Web. The company can say all at once that it's private and all, but we've all experienced with Experian or other websites, things happen, things get out. So once this data is uploaded to a site, where is it stored? How long is it stored for? How safe is it? Again, these are pictures and videos of minors. I'd like to go back and support something Ms. Saylor said as well. If we have a way, it sounds like we have a way already in place. It's just broken. Let's fix that. If all the students have Chromebooks and there's a way to electronically report something, then our first priority should be to fix that. And last, I'd like to, I think I'm hearing bullying being lumped in with crisis support. And the two may be a little connected, but if we want to get crisis support, there are ways to do that without running out and getting this app. I'm all for crisis support. I understand students are going through a tough time now, but I don't think we say we're going to get this app and, oh, by the way, this is a great thing for the kids. Well, if that's a great thing, let's search for that great thing. We don't need the app to provide crisis support. Thank you for your time.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lampkin, may I have your address as well? I didn't hear it the first time.
Yeah, it's 17 Washington Way.
Thank you.
Miss Husted,
Hello, can you hear me?
we can hear you.
Hello, it's Jen Husted, 23 Goose Pond Road.
Thank you.
I had a couple of questions or comments rather about the app. I share the concerns that Mr. Lampkin and Mr. Lepsis and Mr. Hensky and the others brought up. I definitely would be interested to hear a presentation from the company and would like for the parents and the public to have access to that and to ask questions as well. I think that would be really helpful. My other comment kind of pings off of what Mrs. Carbone had said, related to the app and to kind of the crisis that we're in and the bullying and all of that. I'm wondering what kind of additional resources our school would have to manage some of the information that might come in through the app should we get it. So stuff related to behavior management and, I know socioeconomic or not socioeconomic, social emotional learning has been and social emotional wellness has been a big thing this year. But, you open something like that up, I would want to make sure that we had the resources to be able to handle whatever came through. I think it's really important, especially this year. And there was another point and I knew I was going to forget it and I should have written it down. And I can't remember. No, it wasn't pound cake, although I too am a fan of stocks. So I will be purchasing. I can't remember, but I just wanted to say that I definitely, I remember. See, if I talked long enough, I knew it would come back. One of the questions I had was related to kind of the logistics of the app. Should we get it? And we're saying that the kids can access it through their Chromebooks. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that our teachers now have software where they can monitor what each student is doing on their computer to make sure that they're not listening to music when they're not supposed to, playing games or whatever. So I can see a scenario where a kid's fumbling around looking for this app or looking for a way to report something. And, how's that going to be handled in the moment if a teacher sees them and doesn't know what they're looking for, obviously. I think some logistical things that we need to think about if we were to go down that road. So that's everything. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Jen. Ms. Vining, did you have something to add?
I did. Thank you very much. Erica Vining, 12 Jessica Court. So I do also share the same concerns. My daughter, for the app, my daughter has been involved with the peer program. So I absolutely echo Mrs. Carbone's sentiment on that wonderful program. I do hope to see that come back. I saw much growth with my daughter in maturity. She was a mentee. So I think there's also a ton of benefit for her to grow into a mentor if it were to happen that way. for children that could use that extra help. I will tell you that there are a lot of gaps, I think, with this app. That I do share the concerns of minors having access to upload information, the anonymity issue. And then I have to be honest with you, I don't love the fact of further driving wedges between family members, whether that be in their home or outside their home, and helping in crisis modes. Now, don't get me wrong, I do think there's places for crisis management for families that need it and children that need it, but in general, most parents and most family members and the educators are there to educate their children on how to and where to go to trusted adults, and not hide behind an app, having that interaction, being able to address something that is hard to do. I would rather see that be done in a personal matter rather than through an app, because let's be honest, it's just one step before they get to, if it's vetted, then someone personally has got to handle the issue anyway. So I don't understand why, that makes any sense. I don't like and then the security issues. I will also say the other comment I have is regarding the LGBTQ curriculum in all curriculum. I know it's standards. I know they're starting. They're obviously starting in science next year. My question still continues to be, how do you all as a board and as a district abide by the state's curriculum updates, right? But also keeping in the mind that many parents have serious concerns now, not only just in health class, now in all classes. So this is being hit by every angle, and with families that may not want their children to be taught part of this curriculum, how are they going to be notified and how will that be situated? I know we're at the beginning of this. I know that congratulations, Mrs. Chun, for taking on the project, wonderful. But I'll tell you that there's going to be concerns that my kid goes to science class and something is taught to them without my knowledge that might not be in the core tenets of my faith. So I have serious concerns on how that will be addressed. And this has been a concern for me in the past. I still haven't really gotten a solid answer on, I know that you could opt out for specific lessons, especially if it's health, but now that everything's being rolled into all curriculum, you could see where people who do have concerns about this would want to speak up. And I'm not sure if any other parents should. I implore other parents that have the same concerns to email or contact you guys, so that they know that it's not just, Mrs. Vining that has this concern. I appreciate.
All right, thank you very much, Mrs. Vining. Is there any other comments at this time? Questions or comments?
I have just a quick one, if I could, in regard to a lot of the feedback from the parents who are on. I think earlier it was suggested that the representative from STOPit would potentially give a presentation to one of the subcommittees. I'm wondering if it would be possible to do it at a full board meeting so the parents can also hear the information and also have a chance to ask their questions.
I'll certainly reach out to the STOPit rep to find out what their availability is, and if that works with them, what they can do.
Thank you.
No problem.
Anybody else? Now that I figured out how to look for raised hands. All right, seeing none, I'm going to move on to recommendation to the superintendent. Under personnel, we have items 1 through
5. Yeah, 1 through 5.
5.
Yeah.
Can I get a motion?
So moved,
Kevin.
Vicky.
Vicky and who?
Kevin.
Kevin, any questions or comments?
Meg, just one from me. Just to be very clear, the statute on the implementation of people with disabilities and the LGBT persons state that we shall have instruction on the political, economic, and social contributions of persons with disabilities and lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. That is what it is required, is that we show their contributions to society. So just to be very clear, it is not going everywhere. So, you know, but is the same thing that we've seen before with including people of color, including women. We're now expanding that to include people with disabilities in the LGBTQ community.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Hey, can somebody elaborate on number 2? Are we bringing back after school band course and having concerts again? And I'm very happy to hear that.
I'd be happy to tell you about that one, Mr. Lepsis. We had such success with Mr. Ipri pulling off his fall conference or winter concert, I should say, in a very virtual setting. And he came to us and talked to us about his plan for continuing his virtual band lessons and eventually having the students perform again a virtual spring concert. And certainly want to work with him and our students to provide activities when we can.
So is this a full stipend or is it on an hourly basis or?
It is, well, it's an approved stipend that was in the contract.
But we didn't approve any of those positions this year because we didn't have any extracurriculars, minus the, I guess, yearbook, OAL, and one other. So this will be an additional above and beyond what we've approved as a board already?
That's something the board had already factored into the teacher's contract. We already had budgeted for, so it's nothing more than we had already figured out for the year. We just hadn't tapped into this fund at this point in time.
But it's akin to the basketball coaches that we didn't appoint this year and everything else, correct?
That is correct, sir.
Yeah, so we haven't approved it yet. I mean, it's built into a budget and to a collective bargaining agreement, but this is a new expenditure at this point. So do we have will this be being done outside of school hours then?
Correct.
I look forward to that.
Any other questions?
I do. On item number 4, subheadings B through F, are those hours individual per staff member, or is that the total combined pool of hours that will be worked?
Melissa, that is the total number?
That's the total hours.
Okay, thank you.
I'll note that in the minutes.
Any other questions or comments? 1 through 5? Personnel? Roll call, please, Patty.
Mrs. Corey,
You're muted, Gail.
thank you. Mr. Dilks,
Yes.
Colonel Hensky,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Lepsis,
Yes.
Dr. McCloy,
Yes.
Mrs. Shoemaker,
Yes.
Mrs. Saylor,
Yes.
Mrs. Chamberlain.
Yes.
Thank you.
Under financial, 1 through 12. Can I get a motion?
So moved, Brian.
Brian,
Second, Vicky.
Nikki, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Patty?
Mrs. Corey, Mr. Dilks,
Yes.
Colonel Hensky,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Lepsis,
Yes.
Dr. McCloy,
Yes.
Mrs. Shoemaker,
Yes.
Mrs. Saylor,
Yes.
and Mrs. Chamberlain.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, our enrollment, 664. Under unfinished business, anybody? Under new business? Okay, we'll have one more public comment. Please state your name and address. Each speaker will be allotted a maximum of 3 minutes. No one may speak more than once on the same topic. Please keep your comments respectful and non-defamatory. Keep in mind that it may not always be possible or appropriate for the board to directly answer questions during public comment periods. And at this time, you may speak on educational matters not of a personal nature. Any hands?
No hands up, Meg.
No hands. Very good. All right. At this time, we're going to go into executive session. Whereas statute allows for a public body to go into closed session during a public meeting, and whereas the Board of Education of the Tabernacle Township School District has deemed it necessary to go into closed session to discuss certain matters which are exempt from the public, and whereas the regular meeting of this Board of Education will reconvene at the conclusion of the closed session at approximately Anybody want to give a guess? Nine, no, oh geez, 9. Yeah, come.
You want to say
9:30?
9:45?
Let's say 9:45 and we'll see.
9:45. Holy cow, you guys are killing me. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Tabernacle Township School District will go into closed session for the following reasons as outlined by statute. Any collective bargaining agreement or the terms and conditions of which are proposed for inclusion in any collective bargaining agreement, including the negotiation of terms and conditions which with employees or representatives of employees of the public body. Be it further resolved that the Board of Education hereby declares that its discussion of the aforementioned subjects may be made public at a time when the Board Attorney advises the Board of Education that the disclosure of the discussion will not detrimentally affect any right, interest, or duty of the school district or any other entity with respect to said discussion. And be it further resolved that the Board of Education, for the aforementioned reasons, hereby declares that the public is excluded from the portion of this meeting during which the above discussion shall take place, and hereby directs the board secretary to take appropriate action to effectuate the terms of this resolution.
Can you repeat that, Meg? I missed it.
So moved, Jones.
No. So do I have, say, make a motion?
We have Dr. Jones as a first.
Second, Kevin.
Vicky.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All opposed? All abstain? All right, okay, log